Right, for those of you interested in honey, this is a frame of capped honey. So the bees have put the honey in it, and they put a little cap over it on both sides. And we're now going to take the honey out. And to do that, we just run a fork along the front of that, and we'll take all the cap off. The bees will cap it when it's exactly the right consistency rather. So we'll take the cap off that side, and all that gold stuff in there is all honey, runny honey, not like the stuff we had earlier in the year, which was solid honey. So that's one side done, and then we'll just do the other side. So I'll just take the cabins off, but the bees will be able to reuse this frame and put honey in it next year. So if we just take all the cap off both sides, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put it in the honey spinner. And what the honey spinner does is spins it round, and we'll throw it all off to the sides, and then it'll all drip down to the bottom. So we've done that. Can you come and see this now, Tate? We'll put this inside there. That's the spinner. So in a minute we'll spin this round, and the honey will all clip to the bottom, but you can hear it dripping now. Okay? Right, we've had a little bit of a disaster here because this is brood. Now what's actually happened is the queen has laid eggs in the super. So just there and there, can you see that, Tate? Yeah. There is a bee now being born, and they're now coming out. Now the queen shouldn't be in this area, which means I can't uncap this honey and sell it. But there's not too much brood in there, but all these little bumps are going to be new bees. There's one that's just born, looks as if it's dying because there's no bees to look after, but that one's now being born right now. But this is all honey around the top. The queen shouldn't ever get into this section, but she has. So don't know what to do about that, but we'll keep this frame separate. Right, so that's all the honey that's just dripped out of the frames. These are my hands, covered in propolis, which is the stickiest substance known to man. And all the frames are now in hair, minus the ones that have had the bees' eggs laid in them. And they're all now dripping honey in the bottom, which we can hear if we're really quiet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to spin it like this, and this will start to throw the honey out against the sides of the drum. If we keep that for 5 or 10 minutes, that'll all then run down to the bottom, and we'll take off the tap and then see what we got. Right, so we've spun off all the honey, and you can see it's in the bottom of this container. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take it off, and that's got wax and crud and all sorts in it. So we're going to put it in some jars, and then we'll put it through the jars, and we can put it through some filters. But this takes forever, so we're going to have to let it stand for an hour or so. But hopefully in here, if I undo this cap, we should see all our honey coming out. Now it's got lots of wax and stuff in it, which is okay because we can filter all that out later. But that is very sticky and very lovely. Now you can see we've got a jar of honey. Now this in here is all the wax where I've been scraping the cap, and so all that wax has now come off. So what we've got is honey with loads of stuff in it. Now we're going to leave this. Now that takes forever, but the wax will float up to the top, and then I'll be able to scoop it off. But because honey's very thick, things don't float quickly like it would do if it was in water. So we have to wait, or I can put it through a strainer, which is what I'll probably do. But if you look at the bottom of the drum, we've still got about 2 inches or 1.5 inches of honey in there. So I reckon we'll get another 2 or 3 of these out of it, and out of these I'll get 2 or 3 jars of honey, and that will all be clear honey. Right, so this has now stood for a little while, for about 15 minutes. You can see all the wax has started to float to the surface. So what we'll do now is we'll get a jar and we'll scrape some of this wax off like this, This won't go to waste. We'll put this back on the hive and feed the hive with the honey that comes out of it, and that will help them go through the winter. And then what we'll do with this, the stuff in the Pimm's jar, is we'll just pass it through a little filter into a smaller jug, and then we can then put it in the jars for consumption. So this is mostly wax and bits of wood from the frames. Might be a few bees' arms and legs in there, except bees don't have arms. And once we've got all this out, we can start to filter it. So we've put the honey through a filter strainer, so you can see how long it's taken to strain and filter through there. That takes out the majority of the wax and rubbish that's in there. So if I just do this and get it through a little bit, put that on there, get that out of the way. So now what we're left with is some honey in there. You might see some little air bubbles. Air bubbles take a long while to come through, but most of the rubbish is out now. So the final thing we've got to do is just to pour it into the jar, and you have to pour it up to the neck of the jar, which makes sure it's the correct weight if you're going to sell it. But this is for the family, so that's not too much of a worry. So we're going to fill it all the way up to the neck there, and there you have it, a jar of Harper's Runny Honey. Yes. So this is what we're finished up with. We've got 18 jars of lovely Harper's Runny Honey, and if you look over there, Tate is scooping it straight out of a jar because he loves it so much. So happy days, we've got a lot more than what we thought.